Steven Spielberg.
Steven Spielberg.
Steven Spielberg.
Steven Spielberg.
Brad Pitt.
Baz Luhrmann.
Woody Allen.
Quentin Tarantino.
Angelina Jolie.
And she's not a...
Yes, she is.
Angelina Jolie.
James Cameron.
James Cameron.
Stanley Kubrick.
Stanley Kubrick.
Ridley Scott.
Tyler Perry.
Ben Affleck.
Tyler Perry. Orson Welles.
Tim Burton.
Alfonso Cuarón.
Tim Burton.
Christopher Nolan.
Christopher Nolan.
Alfred Hitchcock.
Spike Lee.
No. No, I don't know any.
Angelina Jolie.
Angelina Jolie.
No, I'm sorry.
Andrea, my babe.
No chance. No chance. Can't take that.
Sophia Coppola.
Jennifer Lawrence.
She's not a director.
Alright, I took a gamble, okay?
Sam Taylor Johnson.
I can only think of one actually.
There's the one that did Selma. I think her first name's Ava.
It's Ava something. But apart from that, no, I can't name any.
Ava DuVernay.
Can you name 5 black female? No, I can't. That's terrible.
Well, obviously Ava DuVernay.
I'm pretty sure the director of Selma is black.
As someone who, like, his family, obviously appreciate any films made by anyone from the black community, I can't name any female black directors.
The only one I know is Dee Reese.
Well,
No. Hold it together.
yeah.
And Julie Dash.
I mean, I couldn't even
I
remember
don't know
any female
names,
ones.
so
to be
no,
honest.
not very helpful.
I think that's it.
There is a problem in Hollywood. A problem which continues to go unnoticed as we impatiently wait for the next Scorsese film, pre-book tickets for Ridley Scott's upcoming picture, or continue to see films by the likes of the Roman Polanskis and the Harvey Weinsteins of the industry haul in millions every year. This problem, amongst others, is a lack of diversity. In particular, a lack of black women behind the camera. For the casual cinema goer, the lack of black female characters portrayed on screen is pretty evident. And when we do see them, we'll see the maid, the single mum, the hypersexualised temptress, or the sassy, angry black friend. Ring any bells? These stereotypes are damaging to black women and girls all over the world as they're repeatedly forced to see representations of themselves which simply do not represent them. If we exclude characters such as Naomi Harris as Moneypenny in James Bond, or Halle Berry as Storm in X-Men, or The Hidden Figures, young black girls have very few strong, cinematic, unique characters to look up to.
I'd like to say it's
More.
high, but
I don't think it will be. I think it'll be quite low.
I'll give myself 10.
40.
50?
I'm going to say 25.
200.
Free.
3.
3.
It was 3.
Oh, shit, I was off. Out of 800.
Oh. Oh, okay.
3.
That's deep. Raw.
Oh my god, that's a lot
bad.
lower than I
That's
thought
so
it
bad.
was.
That's well bad. Does that mean anything? Yeah, it means that they're not getting the limelight.
That's actually really bad. I'm quite disappointed with that actually.
3. I think it's because, like, since I guess cinema started, it's majority been the man that's been the director who's organised, controlled everything.
Maybe there's a whole like gender stereotype
Yeah.
about girls aren't as capable as guys.
I think maybe it's low because, like, when you think about the film industry, you don't really think about women working, like, behind the scenes.
Maybe, like, Hollywood or just the film industry for some reason doesn't think that... Maybe just doesn't think that women are suited to be directors, even though that's completely false.
And then added with like the prejudice against black people as well.
Yeah. Like, if people watch the films because of the directors, like, the popular ones are all, like, white males.
Especially for the blockbuster films, like the high budget films, they'd probably think, oh, we'll employ a man.
If you hear, like, a man's name, you feel like the movie might be better.
Let's say if you know.
Well, no,
if you
like
know
they
the
may have had
director,
more
though.
control.
If you know
over
that
the
director,
situation.
what are you laughing for?
But that's only how we feel due to how society is, isn't it?
Like when you think of a director, you sort of think of old white men, or middle-aged white women.
I feel like there's black actors, but I don't think anyone really actually aspires to be a director as such.
Yeah, it's like most of the ones that people know about are the ones, like the popular ones are done by like white people, like especially white men.
It's not really a black profession.
It's probably because of the lack of opportunities for them to actually get into the industry.
Well, I think sadly we still live in a world that's racially unfair.
Like, for one, you're a woman, and for one, you're not white.
I feel like black girls also growing up, like, I'm really given the opportunity to kind of do what they want. Like, as in, there's not that freedom to go and say, do something where you can express yourself, like, and say be a director or be involved in the performing arts or something.
Well, I suppose because you don't get like a realistic representation of black women because it's not a black woman like showing.
Yeah, like
her,
directing them.
They won't be able to give a first person view. It will always be third person or how society is portraying black
will always
women.
be based on other things.
Yeah, and obviously
experience it might be different from what's actually true.
Well, I suppose a lot of it is black women portrayed through the eyes of white women.
Because white men and white women directors don't really know what it's like to be black.
I don't think it affects it in a negative way. I just think that.
No, it does, because like the way they're represented is like based on stereotypes. It's not based on like how they actually are.
They've only got their sort of perspective on it, and not an actual black woman's.
It's almost from a male's perspective. And you have the whole thing about the male gaze.
It's like a white man's directing. It's just going to be what he thinks a black woman's like, not actually how they are. So like in a film, a black female would be like how a white male looks at him, not.
She was thinking deeper than
Actually
me,
how he
actually,
is.
come to think of it.
To be fair, watching movies, often black women are just portrayed as loud, aggressive, and argumentative.
Angry, trust.
Like sort of characters they're casted as aren't like modern characters at all.
There's almost like a false portrayal.
I think if there was more black women directing movies, we get a true, a more valuable like portrayal of black women as a whole.
I guess you don't really realise that it affects you, but then in a way I feel like Hollywood and like the film industry has like a massive effect on young people, especially.
People will watch movies and it'll affect them in their daily lives, or they'll say like, I know a lot of boys would say like they wouldn't date a black girl because they just think they're too much, they're too loud, they're too aggressive.
I don't know the truth of how black women are. Stuff like that.
What about people that aren't raised with?
Other people, yes, because
It will affect
this
the way
might be
they
the one
view it.
interaction that they actually have with black women by watching them on the movies. When you see sort of people on film, you sort of take it as that's who most people are like. If you see a black woman, the stereotypes that the white directors have put on them is how people see them on the outside.
I think a lot of people portray black people in certain, like black people in general, a certain way.
I think this, I guess, would affect me personally in the sense that I have two sisters who, one of them, for instance, is going into, or wants to go into the media industry.
Particularly for like young black girls, if they're not seeing themselves in like the media.
When you don't have the right representation in the media for your type of person, then it sort of brings you down.
And if they were black, then they don't really have a role model that they can look up to.
I think people have less respect for black women. They don't really see them as capable of being that creative.
I think these types of things do affect me because it could potentially have people in my lives not be able to get a job because of how they look or even who they are.
And especially in like comedies and stuff like that.
Mm.
And in horrors.
Yeah, like the way black people are represented, everyone thinks that we're all the same.
Other people get the wrong ideas, and then it just affects like how you're seeing, just because of how like maybe a white director's portrayed you in a film.
And then obviously it could lead into bigger problems, racism, sexism, and stuff like that.
They think we're cowards because we won't go and check out that creepy noise in the basement. But I know loads of white people that won't check out that creepy noise in the basement. Like, come on.
It seems that the only logical solution is to have black women writing and directing films from their own experience. They can show the world that to be a black woman isn't to align yourself with these stereotypes, and they can tell stories from strong black women of history. But where are they? Who are they? According to a report by the Media Diversity and Social Change Initiative, only 3 black women directed one of the 800 top films from 2007 to 2015. 3 women, 800 films for 9 years. Due March 2018 is Ava DuVernay's Disney picture A Wrinkle in Time, which, believe it or not, is the first film with a $100 million budget to be directed by a black woman. Now, let's put this into perspective. 2 Disney films, Captain America, A Civil War, Star Wars, The Force Awakens, both budgeted at $250 and $306 million respectively. Now, in the grand scheme of things, DuVernay's budget is pretty much mid-tier. In a typical case, this shouldn't even be news. So why, in 2018, are black women filmmakers only just reaching this milestone? I would like to explore why it is taking so long and who's paved the way for us in history. Born on the 22nd of October 1952 in Queens, New York, Julie Dash was the first African-American female director to receive general theatrical release for a feature-length film with her cultural classic Daughters of the Dust in 1991. Dash began her journey as a student at the American Film Institute and developed her early body of work between her time there and her study at UCLA in the late 1970s and early 1980s. Dash was a key member of UCLA's LA Rebellion, which began as a reactionary movement to the Watts riots in 1965 and against the backdrop of the Civil Rights Movement and the anti-Vietnam War movement.
In the hand, and still it goes on to the officers could do. Angry mobs of Negro youths and adults moved through their field.
My conscience won't let me go shoot my brother or some darker people or some poor, hungry people in the mud for big, powerful America and shoot them for what? They never called me nigger. They never lynched me. They never put no dogs on me. They never robbed me of my
Black Panther Party is definitely the vanguard of the revolution, and we plan to teach the people the strategy and the necessary tools to liberate themselves.
No more brothers in jail.
Begun by a group of African-American students as part of an ethno-communications initiative, over 2 decades, the movement aimed to reach out to every student of colour at the university and their communities. Contrary to its evocative name, Dash commented that the group wasn't trendy. The term was actually coined by historian and UCLA professor Clyde Taylor in 1985. As a student in the late 1960s, Dash was drawn to the literature and art of other black women, an area with more passion and commonality than the documentaries she was making at the time. These influences can be seen in her earlier works. For example, For Women, a short dance film based on Nina Simone's song of the same title.
My skin is black.
And Diary of an African Nun, a 1997 adaptation of Alice Walker's story. Dash's 1982 short film Illusions follows 2 women in a 1940s Hollywood film studio. One, a white passing mixed-race woman, and the other, a black woman whose singing voice is dubbed over white actresses. The film later won the jury prize for Best Film of the Decade, awarded by the Black Filmmakers Foundation. Then, in 1991, came Daughters of the Dust. First inspired by hearing her father referred to as a gullah, the film, set in 1902 on the North American Sea Islands, focuses on the Peasant family. What they got out there anyway? A Gullah family who simultaneously yearn for their lost West African culture and the possibility of a future in the new post-slavery America. The family is torn apart when the pregnant Eula and her husband decide to move to the mainland, simultaneously leaving behind their matriarch Nana Payzant and the practice of their culture. When black history is discussed in film, our minds often drift to celebrity biopics or narratives focused on oppression, such as civil rights dramas or slave movies. Not only does Daughters tell a historical and socio-geographical tale that's been culturally isolated from mainstream cinema, it also focuses on relationships between women and how they carry heritage and identity. It explores the value of storytelling and the wisdom of elders, most particularly the family matriarch Nana Payzant, who practices traditions and superstitions, serving as a living reminder of the time before. Nana retells stories she's heard directly from her enslaved relatives to her young family, reminding them of the importance of staying connected to their heritage. Eula's unborn daughter serves as a narrator, appearing for fleeting moments on screen as a young girl. The unborn child serves as an ethereal link between the promise of new life and the wisdom and magic of their African ancestors. Whilst Dash is not the first notable black female director, her accomplishments mark a watershed in independent cinema and black cinema, as well as the cinema of the African diaspora across the world. Yuuzhan Palcy, born in Martinique in 1958, was the first black female director to be produced by a major Hollywood studio, with her film A Dry White Season for MGM in 1989. While her achievement can be equally credited in initial success, what makes Daughters stand out as a seminal piece in black film history is its growing legacy, despite it initially being called a fluke. The impact of the film can be seen notably in Beyoncé's 2016 visual album Lemonade. On screen, Beyoncé mirrors the flowing white dresses worn by the Gullah women, the idyllic beach setting, and the unity between groups of women and their natural environment. The narrative explores female identity, embracing African American cultural identity and family, whilst making clear reference to modern issues such as Hurricane Katrina and police brutality. However, the positive view towards the film today is poles apart from its reception at the time. Dash continually struggled to get funding for the film, and finally received $500,000 from PBS's American Playhouse, which was allegedly a third of their normal rate. During the production of the film and afterwards, Dash received criticism, such as questions as to why she wouldn't create a more diverse film, one agent even warning that she had no future. Ava DuVernay and Clyde Taylor both labelled the film as ahead of its time, and it's easy to see why. On the heels of the blaxploitation era, many black filmmakers were also expected to push the sellable, stereotypical narratives of sex, violence and drugs. But Julie Dash was interested in the avant-garde and art house film, and with Daughters of the Dust she strived to branch away from what she called a typical, male-oriented Western narrative structure. Dash continues to make film independently today. However, having never found an agent, Daughters of the Dust continues to be her first and only feature-length film. With the unique story of Daughters of the Dust, Julie Dash stands amongst many other black women filmmakers exploring untypical historical narratives internationally.
I realised, essentially, that society had created the very world that I wanted to work in as one that statistically did not include me.
The writer and director Amma Asante, born in Brixton in September 1969 of Ghanaian parents, describes herself as bicultural, focused on balancing her own heritage with the British arts and culture she grew up with. At a time where Brixton was known more for its police tensions and riots in the early 80s, Asante was trained in dance and drama at the Barbara Speake Stage School. This led to her early acting roles, which included the acclaimed school drama Grange Hill. Asante went on to writing in her late teens and following this, she went on to write the BBC Two series Brothers and Sisters. Amma Asante's debut feature was the 2004 A Way of Life, for which she won multiple awards globally, including 1 BAFTA and 2 at the Miami International Film Festival. The film, which she wrote and directed, interestingly tackles racial violence through a predominantly white cast. Tension between a white teen mother, a group of white boys, and their Turkish neighbour in a Welsh town develops through a language of hatred and ignorance, which evolves into a shocking act of violence. The racial landscape painted in the film is similar to that of many black Britons, including Asante, who grew up in one of the 2 black households on her street. Asante's second feature, whilst visually different, addresses similar themes of a woman's unanticipated power and racial isolation. Belle, released in 2014, tells the little-known story of Dido Elizabeth Bell, the daughter of a British admiral and an African slave. Although the film follows hot on the heels of Steve McQueen's acclaimed 12 Years a Slave, the film could not tell a more different story. Lovingly raised by her great-uncle Lord Chief Justice Mansfield, Belle lived the difficult intersectionality of being brought up an aristocrat but having a skin colour which made her stand out from the norm of her surroundings, a truth that she and those in the world around her simply could not ignore.
I had no idea she would be so black.
One does not make a wife of the rare and exotic.
Does she still have a tongue? I have a tongue. Though yours explains well enough why I may not marry your son. My greatest misfortune would be to marry into a family who would carry me as their shame.
Belle's narrative runs parallel to the case of the Zong massacre in 1781, leading us to the racial conflict which also plagues Mansfield himself. The Lord Chief Justice calls for a second trial in a case in which 132 slaves are thrown off a ship, their captain attempting to claim insurance for his now lost cargo. What Asante tells us in Belle is that not only are films about slavery too multifaceted simply just to be called slave movies, but that this part in history isn't just exclusive to the United States. The third film in Amma Asante's filmography, A United Kingdom, tells another true story.
Responsible for the downfall of the British Empire in Africa. Have you no
That of Seretse Khama, the King of Botswana, and his controversial marriage to Ruth Williams, a typist from London.
How long before the village dust gets in her eyes?
As in Belle, Asante again shows us the literal marrying of British and African worlds, strongly demonstrating her dual identity. By discussing issues of race through conventionally British period dramas, Asante presents a subject with the same splendour and elegance as can be seen in other typically whitewashed narratives. Another director whose diversity is shown not only through her work but within the industry is Ava DuVernay. DuVernay's career can be described as one of firsts. Today, she holds the title as first African-American woman to win the Best Director prize at Sundance for her 2012 film, The Middle of Nowhere, first African-American woman to receive multiple Golden Globe nominations and the Academy Award for Best Picture, and today is the first black woman to direct a film with a budget of over $100 million. A Wrinkle in Time is an adaptation of the 1962 book of the same name, reinvented as an epic Disney sci-fi adventure with a mixed-race preteen girl named Meg as the central hero.
We're here to help you find them. We are in search of warriors.
Warriors who serve the good and the light in the universe. You're kidding.
Before becoming the highly respected director and pioneer for inclusion she's known as today, Ava DuVernay came from humble beginnings. She was born on the 24th of August 1972 in Compton and grew up with her mother, her stepfather and her 2 sisters. Another important matriarch in her family was her Aunt Denise, who instilled her love for the arts from frequent trips to the cinema and to the theatre outside of Compton, where there were none. Growing up in the hometown of hip-hop greats such as NWA, DuVernay took her interest in the genre into her first 2 films, This Is the Life in 2008 and My Mike Sounds Nice in 2010. Her following work definitely cannot be discussed without mentioning influence from her family and her upbringing in Compton, over which police presence hung and the threat of their violence loomed. Following her first narrative picture, I Will Follow, in 2010, which was inspired by her late aunt's struggle with breast cancer, DuVernay helmed the Sundance Award-winning Middle of Nowhere. The intimate story, reflecting the real lives of many Compton women, focuses on the lonely Ruby, a woman dutifully waiting for her incarcerated husband, but wanting desperately to live a life of her own. Ava DuVernay's following projects took black cinema to a much larger scale with her 2 Oscar-nominated features. Her 2014 civil rights drama Selma,
it is unacceptable,
an affecting retelling of the Selma to Montgomery March, which led to the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And her documentary 13th broke down the frightening narrative which has led from the transatlantic slave trade to the mass incarceration of black Americans today.
Kinds of kids that are called super predators.
Millions of dollars will be allocated for prison and jail facilities.
3 strikes and you are out.
Despite her career building serious momentum in the past 6 years, Ava DuVernay's introduction to film came fairly late in life. Studying English and African American studies at UCLA, DuVernay actually looked into becoming a broadcast journalist until what she thought would be a promising internship at CBS News resulted in her being assigned to observe and look through the trash of one of the jurors at the O.J. Simpson trial. Becoming disenchanted with the field, DuVernay moved to publicity, where she built a 14-year career and has to date worked on the marketing of over 120 films, leading her to work with industry greats such as Steven Spielberg and Clint Eastwood. Ava DuVernay founded the African American Film Releasing Movement in 2010, which later developed into Array, an independent film collective focused on spreading and marketing the work of people of colour and women globally. Ava DuVernay's ethos is clear, both on and off screen. Inclusion is key.
Because for people who are not included, it is personal. And so I just was unwilling to let it be that feeling of being on the outside of your own images. Always feeling like you're watching great stories, but gosh, I wish a black person would walk through this movie at some point.
This idea is crucial behind the scenes of her TV drama Queen Sugar, of which all episodes of all 3 seasons have been directed by a woman. Whilst many of these directors have had features made and distributed, prior to working on Queen Sugar, many had previously not had a single episode of television in their directorial filmography. However, the show's success has propelled several of these directors into the shortlist for many directing opportunities. Now, this demand for diversity has only been made possible by what DuVernay and Oprah Winfrey describe as a culture of inclusion. This means that department heads and casting agents are inclined not just to employ people they're familiar with, but search for a crew of the highest quality in demographics where they would never normally look. Whilst Ava DuVernay has accelerated this new wave of inclusion and has become a powerful voice in the conversation, one could argue that this principle doesn't actually introduce black women and other minority filmmakers into the existing Hollywood paradigm. Rather, it creates a separate platform on which they can flourish in their own respect. At the 2018 Oscars, Frances McDormand won the role for Best Actress for her raw performance in the film 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. In her acceptance speech, she made a call from within the industry, from a place of privilege, on an international scale, to acknowledge and push forward women who sit on the periphery of the industry.
If I may be so honored to have all the female nominees in every category stand with me in this room tonight. Okay, look around, everybody. Look around, ladies and gentlemen, because we all have stories to tell and projects we need finance. I have 2 words to leave with you tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Inclusion Rider.
Black women's fight for exposure and opportunity in Hollywood is still history in the making today. However, we must ask the question, what solution do we want? An industry where we write off Hollywood as outdated and stuck, and start from scratch? Or will we strive to re-energise and reinvent the industry from the inside out, creating a culture where inclusion means inclusion, not as a demand from the outside, but as an invitation from within? Through a black female lens, why can't we see what they see?